Welcome. Namaste. I'm Red Feather. Thank you for tuning in to this video. I'm thankful to the law of attraction, and I'm grateful that you allowed yourself to listen to your intuition in guiding you to it. This is the way the law of attraction works. Like attracts like. Now, what is this video? What is it going to be about? Why should you stay tuned? Well, it's going to be a brief introduction into Theosophy from the work of Besant, entitled The Ancient Wisdom. But I want to preface this with a new report by some psychologist named Fishbach, and I just heard this on NPR not too long ago as I was scrolling through my radio stations this morning before I finally settled with classical music, as I always do. And there was a brief story about humans and our motivations, and how what we perceive gives us more motivation is actually not what gives us our motivation. If you were, they conducted several experiments, and they found that mystery, or the element of chance, actually increases the work effort that someone will put into a given activity. Now, let me explain. So, they offered people $2 to drink a very large amount of water. If they were able to drink the water, they would get the $2. Or, in the opposite case, they offered the people $1 or $2, depending on the flip of a coin, if they were able to drink all the water. And the group that had the element of chance between the $1 and $2 actually drank more or worked harder than the group that knew they were going to earn $2 if they drank the water. Furthermore, the study suggested that the element of not knowing actually increases our excitement, if you will. And I consider it to be hope, the pursuit of happiness. All the philosophers have known this for time eternal. Francis Bacon states it very eloquently in his book, The Wisdom of the Ancients, which I'll get into with some as well. I want to go over the entire chapter on Pan and the God of Nature, because it's truly profound. And I think he foreshadows beautifully that with the sciences that we have of modern times of probability, quantum mechanics, cybernetics. Bacon was a true Illuminati, Rosicrucian. Now, what is Theosophy? And why did I mention that story? It's because it's mystery. You see, in chance, God plays dice. Plato tells us, I believe it's in the Symposium, that Thoth, the Egyptian god for numbers, and the word, literally thought, logos, represented by the ibis-headed man holding the phoenix staff for resurrection, and the ankh for eternal life. The ankh's a symbol for the mystery substance that, taken into the body, transmutes the spirit and allows for ecstasis or ecstasy to occur, and then a union with God, or quote unquote entheogenic experience. And what I mean in lay terms is taking a magic mushroom, traveling out of your body, expanding your consciousness to its fully, well, as fully as you can possibly perceive it, I suppose, and then bringing it back in again. There's different mysteries. They're not all the same, between ayahuasca, Syrian rue, morning glory seeds, gypsum weed, Amanita muscaria mushroom, Psilocybin cubensis mushroom, D-lysergic acid, ergot, I believe dried banana peels, the roots from sweet potatoes, basically plants of all different types. Cannabis, obviously hashish in the purified form is a very powerful hallucinogen if you eat enough of it. Their plants in nature in general are designed to aid us. It's like a key going in a hole, and you turn it and open the door. It's exactly what taking these plants do for you. They open they dial the code to the Stargate and open the portal for you to step through. philosophy is a key that gets you through a lot of doors as well. That gets you to the door that will allow you the entheogenic experience. Now, Theosophy. Besant, who published this book at the turn of the last century, tells us in the introduction that the unity underlying all religions. Now, I want to preface this too, that mystery and the mysteries were what the ancients practiced or worshipped. Their religions were called the mystery religions, pagans, because I believe they understood the underlying and fundamental nature of chance or chaos in the universe. So we've been living under a false light that there is order, and in fact, order is not the norm. It is the byproduct, it is the birth child out of chaos. Chaos is the egg that the chicken came from, and will ultimately go back into, again, sameness. Entropy tells us this. And what is the sameness but the seed? All things ultimately revolve around the seed. They come out of the seed, they grow to fruition, they die, they fall, they degenerate, they're diluted, they're reintegrated into the seed to be regrown. It's an Ouroboros eating its own tail. The nutrients from the dead leaves provide the seed bed for the yearling seed to grow in the spring. It's a never-ending cycle, eternal, without beginning and without end. And if I may, just to allow you to know how long plants and advanced plants have been alive on the face of the earth, I was reading about theories for the origin of the moon, and I read this paper presented to NASA in Astrophysics published in 1968. And it had a very interesting fact that scientists at that time understood and knew, that plants, complex plants on land, had existed for at least 3.2 to 3.8 billion years on Earth, because they found a fig tree, now mind you, a fossil of a fig tree that had been what we call overlaid or interrupted by a magma flow. And they dated this based on atomic dating. I believe it was deuterium or something at the time. But 3.8 billion years ago, roughly, or 3.2. And not that, at that distance, it's a long time. If it is even 3.2 billion years, that means that fig trees, which are common around us still today, and the fruit, the fig itself, has existed at least that long. That's a very complex organism. It may seem like it's not, but the tree is extremely complex. It stores within it a consciousness, a record of the entire cosmos. I believe the trees are part of a whole system that span throughout the entire cosmos of our galaxy at a minimum, perhaps the rest of the galaxies, and they spread throughout all the stars that have somewhere around them. Every star, depending on how large or small it is, has to have some Goldilocks zone, you would think, where material that didn't, collect during the formation of the star congealed, accreted into planets, just like our solar system. So every star that you see in the sky likely has some sort of planetary bodies, or, you could say planetoids, or minor planets, or whatever they've classified Pluto is, protoplanets around these stars. And if they're in the right location, where they're far enough away, it's not too hot, it's not too cold, the conditions are kind of appropriate. The planet has some geologic activity, it's got an active core and a magnetic field. I think some serious things can happen, and life can bloom and blossom. I believe that, given the universe as we understand it has existed for at least 13 to 14 billion years, it's a long time for life of a very advanced type to have developed and figured out a way if you will, to spread itself throughout the entire cosmos, and to do this efficiently, like a von Neumann probe. And von Neumann came up with a theory of games that revolutionized modern economics and social theory. I'm a poker player, just like God. The game of chance. You understand the probabilities, and it's an incentive if you think that you have good luck. Just the idea of chance. What could happen? I could get the better outcome, or I could get the worse, because that's honestly how life really is. See, life doesn't give us any guaranteed outcome. Nothing is guaranteed, because we have this kind of unknown hanging over our head at the end called death. And it's not guaranteed. We don't know what's going to happen. Unless you're a shaman like myself and you've died a number of times and you can take people on the journey and show them. But still, objectively, do I ultimately know? Who knows? It's all just a ride, according to Bill Hicks. The ancient mystery wisdom was that. Taking the ride, what the ride meant, that this is all a ride, an experience that you're creating. Literally, each step that you take, each word that you make is active participation in co-creation, because we are all, each and every one of us, individual little nodes or eyes in the mind, constituents, atoms, monads in the cosmos, or chaos, chaosmos, that is the all, that is God, if you will, the all, the Tao, the light and the dark, the chaos and the order. They exist co-equally. The observer has to be from the field of possibility in order to observe what is possible. It's a reciprocal process. So out of nothing came something. This is the ancient wisdom that all the world's religions were founded upon, founded off of, and have grown in a diversified manner over the last 10,000-15,000 years, since the great floods and cataclysms that ended the reign of the last empire, the Atlanteans and the Murians. And it's taken us a bit of a while to restart, but it's only a blink of an eye when you consider that 3.2 billion year time frame that fig trees have been here. And then, okay, if you want to take modern science at face value and anthropology, very recently a hominid fossil was discovered in Ethiopia, in Africa, in the Rift Valley, very near where the original one was discovered by, I believe, Louis Leakey, named Lucy. She was an Australopithecus that was roughly, I believe, 3.2 million years old. One of our oldest, or supposedly our oldest known ancestor on the Homo line. But she was not actually Homo, she was Australopithecus. The Homo line, they found an ancestor going back, I believe, 2.8 million years. And that is an upright, walking, likely talking, grunting, gesticulating, pointing, signing, large-brained mammal with teeth and everything else exactly like anatomically modern Homo sapiens sapiens. The only thing different between them and us is degree. And that degree is refinement of consciousness. That's what things are doing, refining consciousness. There was a consciousness that I began talking about originally, the tree. It's part of the whole system of the cosmos that is a von Neumann probe. The tree can't exist without fungi or bacteria. And if you look at DNA analysis, the root, the most ancient, the most primitive of all DNA structure on the planet is fungi and bacteria. Now, furthermore, fungi and bacteria are capable of surviving in conditions inhospitable to any other life, in radioactive environments, in outer space. Space shuttles go up into outer space and come back with all sorts of wild bacteria. Bacteria that eats metal, for crying out loud. Yeah, wild stuff. And furthermore, bacteria is the smallest known form of life for fungi, down to like 0.0009 microns or something. This is just released. Very incredibly tiny. Now, that tiny particle, if cast into outer space, can travel on what is known as a photon wave, which is basically the waves of light traveling outward from all directions, from all the stars, at nearly the speed of light. And ultimately, it would end up hitting whatever the light did. If it hits a planetary body, the fungal spore would land on the planetary body. These are von Neumann probes. Von Neumann, the theory of man who invented game theory, came up with the theory of von Neumann probes also, which is a self-replicating organism or machine that's sent out to find a potential place that is going to be hospitable for life to be seeded and evolve. I believe the fungi, the mushrooms, are that. They're connected with all life in the oceans and on land. Bacteria plays a crucial role, a symbiotic role. Trees cannot uptake minerals without the mycelium, or the mushroom's body, on the tree roots. Coral reef cannot photosynthesize without zooxanthellae, which is a bacteria that's grown from whale poop, and the coral reef takes it in, and then the bacteria photosynthesizes, and thus the reefs have life. So without the fungi, there is no life on this planet. And anyone who's ever taken one, to use the words of Terrance McKenna, will know, sure as the day is long, that if we're really interested in communicating with quote-unquote extraterrestrial intelligences, the mission or the search for ET, SETI, in Arecibo, where they have the giant antennas looking up into space for radio signals, that they should probably begin much more terrestrial in origin and looking underneath that satellite where all the cows grow, and there happen to be a ubiquitous amount of Psilocybin cubensis mushrooms growing on the holy cow shit. The holy shit? Yeah. Mushrooms. Cows have been worshipped in India for thousands of years because they're holy, because in their poop grows the sacred fruit body of the divine source of all life, the connecting thread. If you read John M. Allegro's Sacred Mushroom and the Cross, he tells you that philologically and etymologically, which means the study of language, that Jesus and the names in the Bible and all the stories are words that literally translate into Zeus and ultimately go back to the name of the mushroom, the Amanita muscaria, the lightning bolt, which we are living, breathing, walking, talking representations of. We're like an external seed or a fruit body that's been cast out in a way, and we forget that we're connected to it all, that we are like its active creating force, the epitome, if you will, at the moment on the progress upwards of the refinement back towards a pure, ethereal, spiritual body where we're able to exist in the cosmos as stars, if you will. The sun is not eternal, but it certainly lasts for a span of time that we would consider eternal. The universe, when truly understood, is eternal because it has no beginning or no end. It's just a coming around and going through itself again. And these von Neumann probes, they begin the process of evolutionary life creation. There's a program in the very most basic form of life that already has, just like a seed, its ultimate goal, the fruit. So the entire evolutionary process is nothing but a growth of the tree, a spreading of the branches, and a becoming of the purpose of the seed, which is to produce the fruit that has more seed inside of it. Okay. And the seed inside the fruit is consciousness, is self-awareness. That way we can reach out and find others. And actually living, breathing, walking, talking representations of the mushroom, of the all. Because all life is connected, is all one. Pan, God of nature, tells us this. Francis Bacon's The Wisdom of the Ancients reveals this beautifully. Now, as a shaman, I've taken these experiences to heart, and I've gone on these journeys, and I know what I know, and I know no thing. Just like Socrates, it's a paradox, it's a riddle, it's a quandary, it's an enigma, it's a cipher that once understood, well, allows you the keys to being the co-creator of your own reality. But with those keys, just like, keys to a fancy new sports car, come a great responsibility. You can't use this knowledge for negative and expect it not to come back around in a negative fashion. If not in this incarnation, if you will, but most certainly in the next. Yes. So Annie Besant tells us that right thought is necessary to right conduct, right understanding to right living, and the divine wisdom, whether called by its ancient Sanskrit name of Brahma Vidya or its modern Greek name of Theosophy, comes to the world as at once an adequate philosophy and an all-embracing religion and ethic. It was once said of the Christian scriptures by a devotee that they contained shallows in which a child could wade and depths in which a giant must swim. A similar statement might be made of Theosophy, for some of its teachings are so simple and so practical that any person of average intelligence can understand and follow them, while others so lofty, so profound, that the ablest strains his intellect to contain them, and sinks exhausted in the effort. She goes on to tell us, it is admitted on all hands that a survey of the great religions of the world shows that they hold in common many religious, ethical, and philosophical ideas. But while the fact is universally granted, the explanation of the fact is a matter of dispute. Some allege that religions have grown up on the soil of human ignorance tilled by the imagination and have been gradually elaborated from crude forms of animism and fetishism. Their likenesses are referred to universal natural phenomenon and imperfectly observed and fanciful explained, solar and star worship being the universal key for one school, phallic worship the equally universal key for another. Fear, desire, ignorance, and wonder led the savage to personify the powers of nature, and priests played upon his terror and his hopes, his misty fancies and his bewildered questionings. Myths became scriptures and symbols facts, and as their basis was universal, the likeness of the products was inevitable. Thus speak the, quote, doctors of comparative mythology, to which there is an alternative understanding and interpretation that the continual discounting and debasing of this knowledge as fanciful and mythical and what have you is narcissism, it's ego, and it's the issue that we have with the materialistic linear causality mode of the Western world today. But there's hope. It goes on. She says, they cannot deny the likeness, but they dimly feel. Are all men's dearest hopes and loftiest imaginings really nothing more than the outcome of savage fancies and groping ignorance? Have the great leaders of the race, the martyrs and heroes of humanity, lived, wrought, and suffered, and died and deluded for the mere personifications of astronomical facts and for the draped obscenities of barbarians? The second explanation of the common property in the religion of the world asserts the existence of an original teaching in the custody of a brotherhood of great spiritual teachers, who themselves, the outcome of past cycles of evolution, acted as the instructors and guides of the child humanity of our planet, imparting to its races and nations in turn the fundamental truths of religion in the form most adapted to the idiosyncrasies of the recipients. According to this view, the founders of the great religions are members of the one brotherhood, and were aided in their missions by many other members, lower in degree than themselves, initiates and disciples of various grades, eminent in spiritual insight and philosophic knowledge, or in purity of ethical wisdom. These guided the infant nations, gave them their polity, enacted their laws, ruled them as kings, taught them as philosophers, guided them as priests. All the nations of antiquity looked back to such mighty men demigods, and heroes, and they left their traces in literature and architecture and in legislation. That such men lived, it seems difficult to deny in the face of universal tradition of still existing scriptures and of prehistoric remains for the most part now in ruins, to say nothing of other testimony which the ignorant would reject. The sacred books of the East are the best evidence for the greatness of their authors. For who in the later days or in modern times can even approach the spiritual sublimity of their religious thought, the intellectual splendor of their philosophy, and the breadth and the purity of their ethic? And when we find that these books contain teachings about God, man, and the universe identical in substance under many variety of outer appearance, it does not seem unreasonable to refer to them to a central primary body of doctrine. To that body we give the name of the divine wisdom in its Greek form, Theosophy. This brotherhood, this is who the fungi and the taking of the sacred entheogens allow the sages, the adepts, the philosophers, the heroes, the great men to communicate with. They access, they've been guiding evolution through the subconscious, through the all is mind, the ether, if you will. If you understand quantum mechanics, our brothers, our evolved brothers on the other planets and other solar systems and other places, they have the power to connect with all other life that has the same software, if you will, or hardware, and communicate and help guide that progress. They understand that it's a time that takes refinement, it takes transmutation, it takes effort. They understand that, and they have patience because they understand that time is an illusion, and that ultimately we will arrive at that location as well. Om Namah Shivaya. Namaste. I love you all, and we are all one. Just let the light touch you. Peace.